Hi there, dance studio owners, and welcome to the Transform My Dance Studio podcast. My name is Shannon Westphere, and I am the Inner Circle Program Manager here at the Dance Studio Owners Association. For the next 6 weeks, we couldn't be more excited to be introducing a brand new host here on the podcast. Annie Leese Thistle is an extraordinary studio owner and Inner Circle member who will be leading from behind the microphone for a 6-part podcast series, Work Less, Make More. Annie is the CEO and Artistic Director of Performing Arts Academy of Marin, also known as PAM, in Mill Valley, California. Annie established PAM in the summer of 2009, facilitating its growth with the help of dedicated faculty and staff from humble beginnings in a church hall to a thriving community with state-of-the-art facilities and premier training in dance and the performing arts. In this limited series, Annie will be your guide to achieving more freedom and balance in your studio life as she walks you through her 6 secrets to a profitable 20-hour work week. If you're looking for resource and support to grow the dance studio of your dreams, make sure to join us in the Dance Studio Owners Association. It's completely free and filled with industry-leading tools that will empower you to grow your studio and reclaim your life. Join us today at dsoa.com/join. We hope you enjoy Work Less, Make More with Annie Leese Thistle.
Hello, and welcome to the DSOA's Transform My Dance Studio podcast. You are listening to episode 1, yay, of Work Less, Make More, 6 secrets to a profitable 20-hour work week with me, your host, Annie Leese Thistle. I am the CEO and Artistic Director of the Performing Arts Academy of Marin, PAM as I call it, located in Mill Valley, California, just north of the Golden Gate Bridge in the San Francisco Bay Area. Not only am I a studio owner, I am also a mother, a single mom to 3 lovely little kids, age 11, 6, and 3. I've definitely got my hands full, but it has been a really amazing journey with struggles along the way for sure. But I've gotten to a place where I'm super, super happy, very content with the direction that my life and my business are moving. And I'm so excited to share some tips and tricks with you along the way, as well as share some stories. Over the course of this series, I will share with you how I went from an exhausted workaholic who rarely saw those 3 kids I spoke of to an empowered CEO with time for my studio that I love, my family I cherish, and wait for it, time for me, a big yay again. One of my yoga teachers often says, your relationship with you is the longest and most important relationship you will have. Today, we are going to talk about the journey and our values. I'll ask you some questions. These questions are designed to get you to think deeply about what matters to you. In order for us to design the work week and life we desire, we have to understand the why. And that means we need to start with ourselves. So we will spend some time on that today. Full disclosure, I am a work in progress, but I will tell you, my life now is a gazillion times more fulfilling and fun than the hamster wheel I thought I was chained to. My message and hope for you is that you free yourself from the things that are keeping you from your most fulfilling life. I'm here to help you do that by reducing your hours, buying back your time, while increasing profit amid a thriving studio culture that you love to be a part of and love to lead. We all had dreams when we opened our studio. Maybe yours included smiling little faces and tutus, inspiring performances, receiving that first little drawing from a student who thinks you are the absolute master of the universe, which you are, by the way. Well, mine included all of those things, but also a large studio with the best programs, most well-trained students, and happy clients. I envisioned a state-of-the-art studio bustling with hundreds of classes, when in reality, as I started my business, I was teaching 20 students total across 5 weekly classes in a church hall. And thank goodness I started small. The growth did happen fast, and I had to learn how to run a business. I did not start the studio because I loved business and I loved managing people. I started my studio because I loved to teach dance and theater. It was so fulfilling to me. I knew I was great at it, and I wanted to share those gifts further and create my own vision. Fast forward a decade, and I'd gotten married, had 3 kids, and had, in fact, achieved that bustling studio I dreamed about. But my entire sense of identity and passion was wrapped up in the studio. I saw my dancers more than I saw my own kids. I worked tirelessly for the sake of being able to say I was working hard. I was strong. I was smart. I was everything to everyone except to the people that really mattered. And I was miserable. Have you ever said they have no idea how much it takes to run a studio? The they could be your students, the parents, your employees, your friends, you name it. The truth is, they don't know. And the truth also is that it doesn't really matter to them, and it probably shouldn't matter to you. For many years, I worked hard to make sure everyone could see how tirelessly I worked for them, how much I cared, how valuable I was to them. I thought, if I work the longest and am indispensable to these people, then I'll show my worth. I'll know it. I'll see it. Success will come. Put my head down, work hard. All those things will happen for me. I kept going and going, doing and doing. During that time, a trusted parent said to me, the time you have while your kids are little, you can't ever get that back. I heard her words. I thought about them, but it really took me another couple of years for that to really sink in. Remember, I was still on that hamster wheel that I spoke of, and I prided myself on the hamster wheel, believe it or not. That's when a little something called the pandemic crept in and smacked us all in the face. I mean, do you all remember what 2020 was like? Especially March. I spent 72 hours pretty much awake, converting my entire studio to a virtual platform. Seriously, we were all rock stars and warriors. And my fellow studio owners, you know who you are, and the DSOA's inner circle got me and the rest of my studio buddies through a huge topsy-turvy time. Now, something I held fast to, and what I want to share with you, is that some of the biggest success stories were started during that time because we are all people that make things happen, not people that life happens to. I thought, if we're going through all of this, I'm going to learn something from it, and I'm going to take whatever advantages I have. It was at that point that I realized that my life was not what I wanted it to be in a lot of regards. And without that complete halt, I would not have had the immense opportunity, very scary, in front of me to transform my life and my business into something that it had not yet ever been, something I had never imagined that it could be, or even thought about that it could be, and then realized it was what I valued most. That centers around stripping away all of the people that were at the studio previously, all of the families, and really realizing who was there, who understood the studio, who wanted that opportunity for their child. And from there, we were able to build our ideal customer avatar, because those that were choosing the studio at that time were the ones who really believed in what we were doing. I had already worked hard on all of those things in the DSOA in terms of defining my brand, really getting clear on my mission, getting my team behind all of that. And it was at that point of excess that we were in prior to the pandemic that allowed us to come back home, kind of tuck ourselves in, realize where we wanted the studio to go, where I wanted the studio to go, and the people that I needed to make that happen. I had been very, very self-reliant for a long time, which I'm sure a lot of you do. You are the one who does all of the things in the studio, perhaps. Perhaps some of you are at the point where you're giving some of those things away, which is completely wonderful and completely necessary. And then some of you may be further along, somewhere along the path where I am, which is that I have a fantastic team that I've put in place that understands what systems need to be there. Those are all lined up. And I am able to take those steps away from the studio that I needed to take in order to take my work week from a crazy Wall Street level hours of work to that ideal 20 hours of work a week. Sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more. And I haven't been perfect along the way in terms of executing that 20-hour work week. But I will say that that is a very hard and fast rule for me now, one that I aspire to achieve and one that is achieved regularly. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you how I went from that workaholic to somebody who now can delegate and has people in place to do the daily work when I'm not there, which is so fantastic. It really is. I love the studio. I also love not being at the studio. So I think for me, recalibrating that value was super important. Okay, let's journey back to miserable Annie just for a moment longer. So there we are. It was probably by this point, April of 2020. I was in my house. And all of a sudden, something clicked in my brain. All of the families, dancers, clients, they all fell away. And I was staring straight at my life. Truly, all of those people that I valued, the dancers, the families, making them happy, making them successful, bringing them everything that they could ever need and want, they were no longer the most important thing to me. They couldn't be. We couldn't see each other. We couldn't do much except for, go to the grocery store, wipe our groceries down, put them in, make some food, teach some Zoom classes, all those good things. I tell you what, when that all fell away, I was standing there looking at my 3 kids with my littlest grabbing my leg, wanting to be held. And I realized that these are the people that are so important to me. And then there was my husband, my soon-to-be ex-husband, who had no idea how to meet me where I was at. Truly because I'd taken my entrepreneurial journey and my personal journey solely on my own and had left him out of the process. Now that goes into many, many things, which I won't go into here. Lots of therapy, lots of coaching, all the good things. But I will say that I do not have a sob story for you about divorce. I certainly don't recommend it from a logistical standpoint. The good news, though, here is that we are wonderful co-parents and both on a happier path. Now, that path I was able to see because I saw it in the moment that I stopped forcing myself to stick to what I considered my path that I'd held so strong and fast to for over a decade and had, formed for a long time in my life. This path was based a lot on expectations and reputation, more so than on my actual desires. And once I turned to what I really wanted, which was a little scary, it was actually a lot scary. Once I really figured out what I wanted without limits, without boundaries, without thinking, oh, that's not what I'm supposed to do. That's not the path that I'm supposed to be on. Once I considered the things that I really, really wanted for myself, that's the moment the world opened up for me. And at that time, I'll define world. For me, world was the direction of my business and the direction of my personal life. Things began to shift for me when I opened my mind to the possibilities of what was in front of me. And once I started to define what was really, really important to me. Now, back to that element of fear. I've always been a perfectionist. And for those of you out there who are perfectionists, a lot of times taking risks is scary, and you will only take the risks that are calculated for success. Now, falling on my face has happened so many times, but I will tell you it took a long time to really be okay with that process and to allow myself to be playful and dream about what my life could be aside from the rigid path that I was on. So my call to action for all of you with this is, what are the things in your life that are keeping you in your place? What are the scary things that you bury that maybe are the key to you finding your success and your happiness? Once we discover these things and have a really clear idea of our value system, then what we're going to be able to do is whittle down the extraneous things in our lives, those things that we can pass off to other people, those things that don't really matter at all, and how we can be our most efficient self in those 20 hours. A quote that I keep on my mirror at my vanity, which is my little sanctuary. It is a quote that I do not know who is the author of it. I looked it up. There are several authors of it. This was another nugget given to me by another yoga teacher. And that quote is, "Everything you want is on the other side of fear." And fear held me back for so long. And I'm sure fear or other elements hold you back as well. So let's start with you. What are the limiting beliefs you are telling yourself? Is it, things will always be this way? I have to keep working constantly or things will fall apart. My employees won't respect me if I'm not working all the time. They'll think I'm lazy. These are things that I told myself at one time or another, and things that I know studio owners grapple with regularly. We always want to look like we're working hard, like we've earned our keep. And I will tell you, we certainly have. And as CEOs of our companies, we do not need to prove to anyone how much we are doing, because our time is valuable, as well as our employees are valuable. And they would not be there, they would not be in place if you were able to do it all yourself and if you had to do it all yourself. Sometimes you have to remind yourself whose name is on the checks, and that, my friends, is yours. Another thing that I want you to think about are, what's really important to you? What are those things that I talked about that really matter? Is it really cleaning a dance until you lose your voice so that you can win first overall? Is that really that important? Or could you maybe give that cleaning session to another teacher and go do something that you really want to do? I held on to things like that for a long time and still, do it at certain times and struggle with that. And although I'm much more aware of it now, you really have to think about, what can you give to other people? Do you have to do that solo? Do you have to run that rehearsal? Do you have to make that phone call? Do you have to do that tour? Or can you spend the time to train people that care about your business and that you've trained well to do that work for you? My guess is you can probably find someone else who can do it. Maybe not just exactly like you do it, but it will be great and you will have time. A little story that I'd like to share with you about time that I've had in the past 2 years that I did not previously have. It's about my kids and taking them to Tahoe, which is where people in Northern California a lot of times go to ski. So it's a fun place to take families for a weekend vacation or really any amount of time that you have. So for the first time, as in a previous life, I would have had another responsible adult driving or helping with all of this stuff. Drove the 4 hours to Tahoe with my 3 small children and was like, what am I doing? This is nuts. This is hard. I don't really want to be doing this all by myself. There's a whole lot of responsibility. Also, let's not mention putting on the 17 layers that you need to put on to get a kid ready to go skiing. Feeling all of these things, took a deep breath, settled in, took the kids outside, and my son McGuire was playing in the snow, and he was grabbing these little ice boulders. They were all different sizes and lining them up on a ledge. I was watching them, rubbing my hands together, looking around, and he looked up at me and he said, "Thank you, Mommy. Thanks for taking us on this vacation." And I just looked at him and melted, and it made everything, every moment of getting up there on my own, every hassle, it made it so worth it. And it is a moment that I will never forget. And it's a moment that I would not have had before when I was at the studio every weekend. That was another thing, something Hillary had talked about in a podcast within this wonderful channel. She talked about what are we avoiding when we stay at work? What are we holding on to? And she mentioned she's not a therapist, and neither am I, but I will say from the own work that I've done on myself is I was truly avoiding my life because there were things within that needed to shift, and scary things that I needed to look at. And from those scary things, I was able to redesign not only my personal life, but my studio as well. So I encourage you to look at those things and discover what's really important to you, as I said. The next question that I want you to consider is, what kind of example do you want to set for the people that matter most in your life? Now, this is one that I ask with a caveat because I was one, as I said, very focused on expectations and living up to external expectations that people had of me. And so I say that with a grain of salt. You do not have to exist for other people, but it is really nice to consider and put ourselves on that pedestal that so many people do, and think about what are the qualities that we value most in ourselves and that we bring to the table and share with the people around us. Because we want to dial into those things, our zones of genius, those things that make us so incredible, and double down on them and tout them and shout them from the mountaintops. Another thing, what would you say to yourself as your best friend? This is a question that I use a lot with my students. I pride myself on mentoring my kids and employees as well. And I ask them this because a lot of times we are hardest on ourselves. How would you speak to your best friend about a situation, about themselves? What are the things that you would highlight? What would you say? How can we hold ourselves with such high regard and such respect, the way that we would treat a dear friend? And what is it about ourselves that we can recognize and see? Another question then that follows after that one is, what self-talk is not serving you and what is? One thing that I used to say all the time, and I did not realize was an issue until it was brought to my attention. It was brought to my attention by a wonderful mentor. Her name is Christina Joy. I found her through Clint Salter as well. So another wonderful thing about being part of this DSOA family, specifically the inner circle, are the resources. And for me, Christina Joy has been such a joy, for lack of a better word, in my life, and really asks tough questions. So one of the things that I said was, I thrive in chaos and I am an adrenaline junkie. And she said, stop right there think about what you just said. She said, I would be very careful what you say to yourself. Do you know what you just said? And I was kind of silent. And she said, you basically just said that you are most successful in chaos and crazy. So you then in turn are going to create chaos and crazy in order for you to succeed. And I was like, wow, how true. That made me think very, very carefully about the power of what it is that you are saying to yourself and I am saying to myself. What are we saying to ourselves daily? What are we saying to our employees? What are we saying to our children that could be creating a perpetuating situation where you are in fact aiming towards something that you don't value? She said to me, Annie, I'm pretty sure from our conversations, you value calm and are looking at creating order and peace and freedom in your life. None of those things bring up chaos. I do not want to live in a tornado. And how interesting. So I no longer say those things. I would love for you to think about what you say to yourself that you would like to modify and change. Another thing to think about is, what is your ideal day or week like? What are you doing? Where are you spending your time? What are those things that really drive you and make you happy? Also, what risks are you willing to take? Part of being an entrepreneur is risk taking. We've all taken risks before, given that we've started our own business. Here we are, naturally taking more risks than the majority of people. What are the things that you're willing to do, the calculated risks that you're willing to take to start buying back your time for you? For me, those risks were stepping completely back from teaching for a year before I dipped my toes back in. I needed to do that in order for me to then reimagine what my teaching week would look like, because I literally taught Monday through Sunday sometimes, actually most times, with very little breaks. And that took its toll. I also took a risk hiring more staff during a time when it really shouldn't have been done. I chose to do that when everything stopped basically, and we moved to Zoom in 2020. I took that time to work on myself and build my team that I had always wanted. And that required me taking a financial risk, a calculated risk at that, to build a team that would in turn give me more time back and also bring in more revenue with a solid plan, of course. Now, you might be wondering what my 20-hour work week looks like now. I'll tell you, sometimes, especially right now, it's not always 20 hours. Right now, I teach 4 to 6 hours per week and use the rest of the time for leading my team and mentoring my students. One thing that's really important to me and is my zone of genius, one of my zones of genius, and something that I really love being a part of is producing shows. So we are currently working on our holiday spectacular. So that does require a little bit more time. So I'm putting in a little bit more time than I would normally during other times of the year. But I will say that is counterbalanced by having almost my entire summer off. I do not set foot in the studio from June, June 4th-ish. So right after we do our company auditions until mid-August. So that is my time to travel, my time to spend with my family, and my time to let my team do what they know how to do, which I'll delve into more in future episodes. I encourage you to think about your values and then work backward from there to discover a path to achieving those. I can bet that many of them do not involve working morning to night at your studio. What do you value? Do you value freedom? This could be freedom with your schedule, financial freedom. There are lots of freedoms. Do you value time with family? Think about all of those things. Discover what really matters first And then we can start to work towards achieving those things. Next episode, we will dive into how to start eliminating work hours from your week. And this can be done through a simple exercise I take myself through from time to time, as well as tips for delegation and how to structure your business. I look forward to seeing you in future episodes and chatting more about what it is that we can achieve and how you truly get to thriving, profiting, working less, and doing it all in 20 hours a week. Thanks so much. Until next time.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Empire Formula on the Transform My Dance Studio podcast. If you are ready to take your studio to the next level, make sure to join us for free inside the Dance Studio Owners Association, where we have everything you need to grow your studio and reclaim your life. Join us today at dsoa.com/join. If you loved this episode, we encourage you to rate and review the podcast. These simple things allow us to continue bringing you world-class hosts and guests every Monday right here on the Transform My Dance Studio podcast.